Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor Guerra. Will, great show coming up. We've got Justin Hokanson. He's going to join us in a bit. We're going to work through some Auburn things, a lot of the things that we've talked about in the offseason, some great insight from somebody that does just tremendous boots on the ground reporting there on the Plains. And then we have Pitch Me easiest SEC schedule for 2024. Something that I threw this idea out, and I'm not even sure if I have my official biases. I have a few teams in mind, but I don't know that I have a number one that we're going to bring to the table. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But
This is a cool topic. I like this topic because everybody has different opinions of different teams. So it's like if I'm high on a team, somebody else might not be. And it's not like we have really any like bastions of consistency left. I mean, Georgia's one, right? But they're in the SEC. So you could usually pencil that L down. But if you're like, I don't know, Oklahoma might win 8 games. I don't know. It's happened.
Highly subjective, which is ideal for Pitch Me and what we try and do because we want to be swayed. We want opinions to be heard. So that's what we'll do a little bit later. But we got to start with probably the big headline in college football this week. And I say headline a little bit tongue in cheek, but Brian Kelly is not into buying players at LSU. That was the headline. But the viral comment, in case you did not see it, of the LSU coach that he made with Jacques Doucet, as Andy Staples mentioned, just such a fantastic Louisiana name, Jacques Doucet.
Jacques Doucet.
I'll name team legend for media. Would say that every single time if I possibly could when talking about LSU. But Brian Kelly does this interview with him, and it is on the heels of whiffing on a couple of defensive tackles in the transfer portal. Full context is needed to properly dissect what's fair criticism and what's not fair criticism, because we talked about this beforehand yesterday, and we agree on some things and disagree on others, which is totally fine. I think there are layers to this. Better yet, Will, do you mind if I start us off by reading the full quote instead of just say, right? Because I'm sure many people listening to this, you heard what I said at the top, and you heard Brian Kelly doesn't think you should be able to buy players, or Brian Kelly doesn't want to buy players, and that's what you took away from it, and that's where you got your conversation started. So this quote, I'm warning people, it's 2 minutes long, so stay with me, but I do think it is worth it. So Doucet says to Kelly, so the interior D lineman, where are you right now with that? And Kelly responds, well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences I had that we were in the market in recruiting the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because we're selling something a little bit differently. And that is, we want to recruit, we want to engage, we want to build relationships, we want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players. And unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. Look, I understand that NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. They are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year, and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place. If you like all the things we do here in developing our players, bringing you into a championship program, playing in front of the best fan base in America, playing for championships, and having an opportunity for NIL, you should be a Tiger. But if you just want to get paid, it's not the place for you. Okay, a lot. There's a lot. Why is there always a lot in what Brian Kelly says, Will?
That's the thing. He just can't stop talking. I think that's the issue.
It is.
He is very. You know what he is? He's almost the Michael Scott of college football.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Will. And if I do office character, SEC coaches as office characters, and I put Brian Kelly for Michael Scott, that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. But I think you're kind of right.
The shot of him on the jet ski in the Travis Scott video, put it over the top for me, because that's his ideal life. That's what he thinks is the most fun. But then being the boss, not his best thing.
Yeah, it's really not. If he had just cut that off at, if he had just cut it off at, it hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, but we're doing what we can in NIL, and we just didn't think these guys were worth it. If he had just said that, which was a variation kind of like what Hugh Freeze said which is we'll get to those comments later with Justin Hokanson talking about the quarterback position and not wanting to spend that type of money. If he just says that, Will, we're not talking about this right now. And the timing. The timing is huge because in 2024, when we know that teams are buying players, as Brian Kelly said, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's not being considered against the rules, like then that's part of the game. That is the game. We had Saban with the whole A&M thing that Jimbo bought the entire 22 recruiting class. And then Jimbo acted like someone came over to his house and lit a bag of dog crap on fire and ran away and then screamed, "Don't put it out with your boots, Ted." That didn't happen. But it felt like
that's such an underrated scene. Don't put it out with your boots, Ted. That gets me every time, bro.
I used to have a teacher in high school that would just randomly at quiet moments would blurt that out. And this teacher was so funny. Underrated line. Very underrated line. But timing is everything. And because of when this happened, that's why the reaction was what it was. In addition to it being after you lose a couple of these guys in the portal at a position of need, but the timing of this happening in early May when we have nothing else to talk about and Brian Kelly generalizing this, that's why this was brought to the forefront in such a prominent way this week.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think part of it, I was talking to you off air about just kind of like balancing being an objective person and being a fan. And I think that it's a double-edged sword for Brian Kelly because no matter what he says, people are going to hate it, right? But knowing that, you can do some things to mitigate that. And I think like Moscone had a really good video about it. It's like, it was a 25-minute interview. It was a 4-minute answer. That was 18 seconds of the answer. That's always how it's going to go. If it wasn't basically whatever he had said about those defensive tackles would have gone viral in some way because everyone's kind of aligned in kind of the general non-LSU fan recruiting. Lots of LSU fans too, recruiting populace of like LSU missed on this. You know what I'm saying? And I think
so. Wait, can I ask you a question? So along those lines, like everything that he had said about that would have gone viral,
right?
If he says, I don't think Dominic Williams, who ends up at Oklahoma, and Simeon Barrow, who ends up at Miami, if he comes out and just says, look, those guys weren't the price that they were seeking, in my opinion, you're right.
He's throwing players under the bus.
Then he's throwing players under the bus.
Yeah, I agree. Then I'll tell you exactly how that goes. Then he's throwing players under the bus. Then he's lying on players. Same old Brian Kelly, what he used to do with Tommy Rees. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. But I think there'd be a different level of almost respect by
no, that would be worse. Nope, I'm here to tell you right now because that's the biggest criticism of Brian Kelly and the one that people clutch their pearls about the most is these are kids. Why are you putting all this undue? Oh, you're making these kids look like they're money hungry. Why would you do that? He didn't specifically call them out. I think he could have, but I actually think he took the high road and it bit him here.
It bit him because he kept talking. It bit him because he kept talking and then he generalized. If he had made it specific to this situation, it's probably a different discussion because everybody has a certain pool for NIL. You have a certain amount of money that you spend, and if you don't feel like this player is worth it, then you just don't. Right. And not everybody has the glaring issues at a position in the way that LSU does. And coming off of the season defensively that LSU had, that's part of this, and that's part of why this conversation exists. Like LSU, we know, and I haven't brought up this specific stat, but it's worth mentioning here. LSU returns one player from its 2023 roster at the defensive tackle position who played at least 50 snaps last year. Okay, that's good. But as Brian,
the two guys I want aren't there anymore, so why do I care? Yeah,
but they just had 3 defensive linemen drafted, so like
exactly those 2 guys are gone.
So it was like it's weird though because he's kind of bragging about that in one sense, but in another sense, it's like, all right, well, this is still obviously a need that you're admitting absolutely exists. And look, recruiting defensive linemen out of the portal, it hasn't fared very well. But he just, for whatever reason, did not choose the best way to be able to word this. And I get where he's coming from this standpoint of feeling like you wanted this player, you made this pitch, and you didn't get it for a reason that frustrated you. And you felt like all those things that you talked about, the positives of LSU, with the development, the relationships, the fan support, the playing for championships, all that stuff. You felt like all of that didn't mean anything. So that's why you came off in this way. But the thing that kind of, I think, came up short in that explanation is acknowledging that anyone in the portal who is even considering LSU, like these guys, they've already taken these things into consideration just to whittle that list down of what that looks like. It's possible that all the other schools involved in a situation like this, where it does become a bidding war for a Final Three or something like that, it's possible that all those other schools have already been on a Zoom call with that specific player and had those boxes checked. So a recruit in the portal said, all right, I feel like I have 3 really good options. Let's see what the highest bidder wants to be able to do for me. Like, that's not, it's not to say that anyone can step in though and have that opportunity. If SUNY Oneonta comes over the top by $10 to beat LSU, it's not saying Dominic Williams then commits to SUNY Oneonta. All those other things for LSU that Brian Kelly is talking about, like, that matters. Do we think that he listened to Brent Venables talk about all of those great defensive linemen that he developed at Clemson? The guy who had Brian Kelly's sitting here talking about having 3 defensive linemen drafted. Brent Venables had 3 at Clemson that were drafted in the first 17 picks of one draft.
Yep.
I mean, like, so his track record is unbelievable. And so it comes off as, oh, well, he's just going to the highest bidder. And I think, there is a bit too much generalization going on with Brian Kelly. And for me personally, not for everyone, but for me personally, that was the biggest gripe that I had with him.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. I'll just kind of dive into my surfboard here. So here's the thing about Brian Kelly.
Do you dive onto a surfboard? Is that how that works?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was imagining a skateboard. I was imagining I was just Lil Wayne in that situation. But that's what's bumping around in my old noggin. Anyway, so here's my thing, right? I am getting sick of the faux outrage every time Brian Kelly talks because, as we've just described, he is Michael Scott. Like, no one expects Brian Kelly to get up to a microphone and say a cool, fun thing, right? And furthermore, the people that don't like him, and I mean, we disagree on this. I've seen it a lot. I get it. I think people are unwilling to admit they were wrong about Brian Kelly initially. I think that most of the people who talked about the hire, especially who have click-driven jobs, got lots of clicks, got lots of money off of saying Brian Kelly was going to win 6 or 7 games, was not going to fit in with Louisiana, could not recruit, the area was going to reject him. He said family weird. Okay. And have you seen those people come out and like apologize for that? Because they're wrong.
I want to know how much money they made. Now you got me thinking about that.
No, right.
What's that's like a Ravel projection, right?
Yep.
Of money that was made by tweets in columns. Yeah, there were a lot of people that came out and said that. And I felt like at that time when that whole back and forth was happening of people who watch college football say Brian Kelly's an elite coach versus the people who say this is just a fit that's so awkward and it's never going to work. I felt like that was like legitimate back and forth. And I guess I've kind of moved past from that because the first 2 seasons have told me more so than not that Brian Kelly is still one of the best coaches in the sport.
And you're a logical person who weighs things objectively. You don't settle personal scores. You know what I'm saying? And you're right. I've seen people who have said, okay, I was wrong, or I was right initially. Some people were right. I was not one of them, right? I was skeptical because I heard so much of the media talk about it. But I mean, when the hire was made, I was very, very excited. But I saw the press, the PR stuff, where he was talking in front of a microphone, dancing in front of recruits, whatever. What I've come to realize is unless you have a history of being objective about Brian Kelly, I don't trust what you have to say about Brian Kelly because so many people out there live to just dunk on Brian Kelly that no matter what he says, and I'm so glad you phrased the question the way that you did because yeah, if he comes out and says these players are asking for this much money, it's about you're singling out players, just like he did on the defense last year when he said it's about the young guys. Everybody says it's not the young guys, it's the veterans. Okay, fine, whatever. So point being, I think a lot of this animosity towards Brian Kelly is people trying to get that lick back. You know what I'm saying? Saying, okay, because like there was a specific guy, I'm not going to talk about it, but a guy I'd respected before he told me that Brian Kelly was not doing a good job at LSU. I didn't know that opinion was still around, okay? But if you're coming from a place of hatred of Brian Kelly, if you're coming from a place of, I don't like this guy, so I want to dunk on him, you gotta kind of put on your big boy pants and appreciate that he and, the AD, Scott Woodward, and Austin Thomas, the GM, are 3 at the best in their positions at the business, okay? We could talk about what LSU has done in the other sports. We could talk about, what they won 3 championships in basically a calendar year in gymnastics, women's basketball, baseball, all that. Okay. So I'm saying that to say LSU is not broke. Okay. Let me start there. LSU is not broke. Now, what they have done with their NIL, if you really pay attention, if you take the time to see what they're doing, they've realized they're not going to win a bidding war with Texas, Texas A&M, Miami, Ohio State, Ross Bjork, shout out, right? They're not going to do that. So what they're going to do is maximize their NIL value. They're going to do things like, get Haley Van Lith, Angel Reese, Tommy Tanks, Paul Skeens, champions, not Lith, but not Van Lith. But so point being, they're gonna maximize that, right? They'd be done on this. I mean, if you look at the top 5 evaluations in On3 of women's NIL, LSU had 1 and 2 for a long time with Angel Reese and Livy. I don't know where that's at now.
I would pay for Livy Dunn to not be on NIL anymore, just so that I don't have to see the Viore commercials every single time I watch a YouTube video. But that's a separate discussion.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. She's too good at selling herself or marketing herself, right? And so LSU pushed NIL LSU, and they were accomplishing those goals. Now, what they realize is we're a small little university in Baton Rouge. We don't have T. Boone Pickens. We don't have Life Wallet guy who's running a scam. We got Raising Cane's money. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend money where it makes sense. We're going to do things like we're going to go after Bryce Underwood, okay? You got in the door there with having Jaden Daniels, having Joe Sloan, having a level of success, right? If Iowa backed up the Brick truck, to your point, and said, hey, Bryce Underwood, $5 million, he would probably still say no, because there's so much more money for Bryce Underwood to make on the other side. So just as I say that, LSU understands, like almost no other team in the country, athletic department in the country, value of $1, how to not get finessed. And I think that's exactly what's happening here, right? Where the price of a brick went up when you talk about supply and demand. Everybody knew LSU only had that second portal window to get people, right? They didn't have Bo Davis. When you're looking at LSU, you maybe the worst defense in the history of college football. You're talking about you don't know your coaches. Everybody's losing. Who was good last year at LSU's defense? There was not a single position that was good last year.
Harold Perkins had moments. Zay Alexander pre-injury had moments, not early on in the season, but later on, Spates didn't. Okay, yeah, point stands.
Yeah, exactly. Like the transfers they brought in were cheaper. I get it. It didn't work. They tried to maximize that. Year 1, they were great. Year 2, they were not. Okay, so they thought, let's kind of like refocus here. Okay, so the price of the brick goes up because everybody knows LSU. Okay, if I offer you a glass of water, you can say no, thank you. Right? It's free. If you're in the desert and I say, Connor, here's a glass of water. It's $500. You're going to say, I'm going to give you $500 and I'm going to think about it later because that water has now gone up due to supply and demand. That is what I believe. If you listen to, Moscona and the best LSU fan we know, Chris Marler, put out a number. I'm not going to, reference that. I think that I think, and I talked to him about this. He stands by it. I'm not a reporter, so I can't report anything, but, put out a high number for Dominic Williams. And what I'm saying here is that Brian Kelly just gave a press conference that he didn't want to get finessed. Okay. And I'm going to say one more thing on this tip too. Okay. Everybody in the national media, when they're judging Brian Kelly, I'm going to tell you guys something. LSU has had 4 10-win seasons in the last 10 years. Okay. 2 of them with Joe Burrow, 2 of them with Brian Kelly. This thought that LSU needs to be an 11, 12-win team every year like Alabama for our fans to be happy, I don't know where y'all have been. I feel like we've created this market economy around the transfer portal. These same people that get the clicks have convinced us that 1 or 2 defensive tackles was going to make LSU into a good team, a great team who could contend for a championship after having the worst defense in college football ever last year. What we have said time and time again on this podcast, Connor, is you don't rebuild a defense in 1 year. When I talk to Marler, he's higher on LSU than I am, okay? And like I've said on this podcast, LSU's issue is not their DTs. I trust Bo Davis to go do what he's done and turn 3 stars into first rounders. Our issue is with our defensive backs, okay? But you have this market economy of people who have been pushing these stories of like top 10 players in the portal. Oh, Brian Kelly better get a defensive tackle. Okay, so he goes up. He realizes all those press clippings are out there. Well, suddenly the price of the brick goes up. Suddenly he sees, well, I was expecting to pay this amount. Now I got to pay this amount. Now I got to make this guy who is not going to win us a championship. This is not Caleb Williams. This is not Jaden Daniels. This is a defensive tackle.
Makes me feel better. Yeah.
Right. Caleb Williams is a game changer. You put him on, Georgia last year, they're undefeated. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the key. Like, you put him on, one of those teams that's just outside, they could win a championship because he's that good. Okay. A defensive tackle is not going to fix LSU's defense or turn them into a national title contender. Now, if they were a player away and they believe that, okay, fine. But like, I just want to remind everyone, you're not smarter than Austin Thomas. You're not smarter than Scott Woodward or Brian Kelly. So what they see here is how Georgia and Michigan built their titles. Yeah, there are some guys in the transfer. We're going to talk about, I've said it over and over again. Georgia's got the most receiving yards from transfers this year. How did they do that? by having guys like Amarius Mims that barely played that went in the first round because he was such a high recruit. They developed. They trust Georgia and what they've done. LSU has to rebuild their full defense, and they're going to need 2 or 3 seasons to do it. 1 year of having 11 random dudes that met each other in a parking lot is not going to power LSU to a championship, and I've been saying this for months. So I guess the thing that is weird to me is that people are saying, oh, you need to pay a singular defensive tackle when you've proven you have a defensive tackles coach who can turn, lead into gold better than anybody. You need to pay this guy more than either of these 2 guys, right? Barrow from Michigan State and Williams from TCU. You want to make either of these 2 guys the highest paid player on your roster to go continue to not win a championship. So when you bring in that player for 3 months, everyone knows you paid that person more than Will Campbell. You paid that person more than Garrett Nussmeier. You paid that person more than Jaden Daniels. You paid that person more than those 2 receivers to stay. In the locker room, that guy walks in and you're like, this guy's not Caleb Williams. This guy's not going to save us. Why am I sitting here playing for this? We're trying to build a culture like they have at Georgia, like they had at Michigan before their coach left them. Okay. So point being, I see exactly where Brian Kelly is going here. I think that there is, because of this income, like take economy where everyone's got to be the best. Everyone's got to compete every single year. Everybody's going to do. Guys, again, I've said it over and over again. This was a 6-1 football team without Jaden Daniels last year. Okay. Do not think of this LSU team as a team that has this huge step to take forward. Think of them as a team that everybody thought Brian Kelly was going to win 7 or 8 games, probably get fired. He did the opposite of that. He won 10 games. Now we're going to go lie to ourselves and say, well, he won 10 games twice. When's he going to start winning 12 games? Well, when he has more than he won 10 games and beat Alabama and won the West by starting 2 freshman offensive tackles. That's never happened in LSU history before. So this is not this great juggernaut of a team like what Ohio State had last year where they were a quarterback away. And now you're going to go get your guy. You're going to go get your offensive coordinator. You're going to change everything. LSU is a defense away, and they were not going to get that in one limited spring portal window. And when they saw the price of the brick went up, they went, man, I trust Bo Davis. We can save that money that we just spent on all these 8 coaches, and we're going to, next cycle, we'll look at those 2 or 3 impact transfers. But that guy's not going to save us.
I think a lot of that's fair. And the more I hear you talk about it, the more I'm kind of on board with that, even though I do find myself still a believer that Blake Baker can turn around a defense quickly and that the right scheme in place can maximize abilities in ways that obviously we did not see. And I think I agree with you in that it's more of a slow build with Bo Davis. I was going back through the numbers too, because I was like, man, I remember that first year he was at Texas with Sark. And I just have these visions of that Arkansas running game just running all over Texas. And I remembered thinking that year that the Texas run game couldn't stop anyone because those guys were still early in their development. They were 114th in the country against the run. So that's not something that instantly, just because you have a Bo Davis on board, that means you have your next version of Sweat and Murphy. That took time. That took time for those guys to be able to get to where they are. And I agree with you. It's not like Dominic Williams was taking a 9-3 LSU team and turning them into a 12-0 team. I fully agree. I do think it's interesting, though, to think about it. I'm actually thinking this is a rare instance where I think you're thinking more practically and I'm thinking more like the fan from this standpoint, which is weird because I'm thinking of this as, all right, well, I know Brian Kelly has these crazy incentives in his contract, right? Where even if he goes to a bowl game, it's like an extra, $250,000 or something crazy on top of his base pay where it's $250,000. And I'm thinking about that type of money and applying it to an impact player, somebody that could be an all-conference type player at the most obvious position of need that can actually be addressed in the portal with an immediate, ready-to-play guy like that who can stop the run. The passing, rushing numbers need to improve, but you get what I'm saying. And I'm thinking about it from that standpoint of like, man, if you told me in theory, again, I don't know this. If you told me in theory, this is the difference between LSU going 9-3 and missing the playoff or LSU being 10-2 and hosting a home playoff game, I'd be like, just pay that $200,000, man. Just pay that $200,000. It's not money that I care about. That's not coming out of my pocket in theory. But I would be like, hey, just pay that $200,000. We know what goes into this program. I want to see my team host a home playoff game. And I don't want to be sitting there in mid to late November going, gosh, our defensive tackles suck. We have no depth whatsoever. We don't have a guy that can get a stop on 3rd and 2. I'm thinking about it from that standpoint as a fan. And when I hear Brian Kelly come out and say that, I'm kind of like, well, dang, man, you guys spend in these areas and these areas. And you talk about all those things that LSU does do from an NIL perspective. And you're like, you couldn't just go a little bit further. But you're right. Everybody has their limit. Everybody kind of has their place they're willing to get to. And if it's not right for you, it's not right for you. Now, I think what we've said, there's a lot of truth in it, in what Kelly said, that gets lost in the shuffle. And that there are people who, if they saw their coach say the exact same thing, they'd be like, yes, sign me up. That's the perspective I want. But because it's Kelly, I agree with you. And that he will be viewed through that very specific lens. I think there is a bit of like some of the parts where I push back, where Kelly is talking about how, we want to do things based on relationships, stuff like that. It's like, dude, post-spring window, you don't have that opportunity. Even Hugh Freeze, as Josh Pate was telling us, is talking about 24-hour relationships that you're having with guys. You need to snap that. Like, if you are going to get to that place where you're that coach who is knocking on the door and you're trying to compete for a championship, your ability to be able to make that 24-hour pitch with someone, maybe not this year with this team and this exact situation that you're talking about, but eventually that's the type of situation that can be the difference in you winning a national championship and not. And that, I think, is more so how I'm trying to think of this now long term. And maybe I shouldn't be thinking so specifically of this exact situation, but I would hope that Brian Kelly is going to be able to not do as he said and be like, hey, it's entirely about relationships. There are some deals that you're going to have to do to win a championship that are just more transactional. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you have, a situation where that guy's automatically the highest paid player on your roster and that guy's getting paid more than Will Campbell. From that standpoint, I get the locker room dynamic. But eventually, you're going to have to get to this place. We're going to have to make some of those tougher decisions. And that's kind of what I want to see Brian Kelly pivot away from, as opposed to what he said.
So let me answer that in two parts. Number one, the coaching salary thing, to me, I'll say it like this, okay? Did any of y'all listening right now have ever worked for a corporation? You've been in this exact same situation where you say, well, our team can't afford, paper or whatever, not paper, but like just something that we want. And this team over there, they're going on vacation. Why is that? Budgets are just split up differently, okay? In every corporation, in every corporate environment, a coaching salary is going to be in this super giga competitive market where if you don't hire Brian Kelly, someone will. And it's a lot easier to get donors on the boat for a name, a guy who has a reputation like that, to line up, circle the wagon, and say, hey, this is when it's time to not look broke. It's time to steal the winningest coach in the history of Notre Dame. Okay, got it. We've all done that, okay? Now let me further answer part two. I actually don't even really think this answer is super duper close. Given what the floor would have been, I think Brian Kelly has landed the most impactful transfer in the history of college football, which was Jaden Daniels. And he did so with the potential of alienating Garrett Nussmeier, who is going to start this year. Would you push back on that?
Joe Burrow, Cam Newton.
Yeah. Cam Newton's a good one. I'll give you, people are screaming Cam Newton at their, and that's fair. I will say this about Cam Newton. You had your Nick Fairley. You had a good defense, right? You had, people want to dump, people act like that team had nobody. The offensive and defensive fronts on that team were nasty. They were beating people up. So it was probably about maybe an 8 to a 10 win team without Cam Newton, much like the other Gus teams we've seen, right? That did elevate them to a great team. I understand that, but that was not a 6-win team without Cam Newton. That was just a regular Gus team. Okay, we've seen them. And only the last one got him fired. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that the thought of Brian Kelly can't lure in these big name transfers when he wants them. Look at the Heisman Trophy. Look at the guys, the guys that he has elevated. I think when it's time to make the big swing, he looked at the roster. He said to himself, we need 2 corners when he got here. He got them both. They played really well in 2022. He said, look, and also, we need to land a Harold Perkins. We need to have a Bryce Underwood. People said, couldn't recruit. Transfer portal game was passing by. I'm just saying, look at we could talk about Denver Harris not working out. I understand it, but that's a cautionary tale. That's what people don't understand. I could say, well, he got Denver Harris. He was the number 1 rated player in the portal. So it's kind of 2 back-to-back years. He got the most impact player of the portal ever. And then the number 1 player in the portal, who wasn't Travis Hunter, who was going to come with Deion. He was number 2 overall, but not really fair. And then they go, well, that didn't work. Yeah, exactly. Great point. It didn't work. It didn't matter. He was not good. He didn't help us. Florida State and everyone else still cooked us with Denver Harris. So that's kind of my point, is it's like, yeah, it sounds like copium. And like I said, I'm committed to LSU not being very good this year. I'm fine with it. And like I said, people do not really factor in that LSU, they're making up this standard for LSU and then being mad that LSU is not reaching. When Brian Kelly has told you, we're giving Billy Napier time to beat his timeline. I've said that on here. Brian Kelly is ahead of his timeline, He's ahead of the national media timeline. He's doing things his way, and people are like, oh, Brian Kelly is stupid. Okay, go win as many football games. Win half that many if you want to call Brian Kelly stupid.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between sticker shock and market correction.
Yep.
Big difference. And it's a tough thing to figure out. I think some coaches, boosters, whoever are struggling with that. I think I'm even struggling with that because you hear the numbers that are thrown out. And, I always say take the NIL numbers that are thrown out with a grain of salt just because who's throwing them out there, why, what the motivation is, all those different things. But yeah, I mean, I do eventually want to I want to see Brian Kelly get to a place where he acknowledges that it's okay if some of these acquisitions are transactional. Not all of them have to be. And I'm sure more of them are than he probably likes, but where you're just going to have an issue on your roster and you're just going to have to address it in some way, shape, or form. And the example that we were talking about yesterday is like, if this is free agency, if that's the place that we're at in college football, think of it like NFL free agency. When you host these guys on free agent visits, and then if a coach, let's say, Saints example of Dennis Allen for, host these guys on free agent visits, and then they pick somewhere else and they get more money elsewhere. If Dennis Allen gets in front of a podium and says, you know what, they just weren't buying into our culture, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, he got more money to be able to go here.
No, they would turn on Dennis Allen if he said that too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, he would get skewered for saying that. Be like, dude, what are you talking about? This is free agency. You're supposed to wine and dine these guys at this point of the process with what you need. They recognize how transactional it is. And that's not necessarily what fans want to hear, but Brian Kelly's going to be caught in the crosshairs because of that. Because he's at this very, very unique place in sports of scrutiny that is similar to Joel Embiid, who every time of the year he gets this. He's not in good enough shape to win in the playoffs. Every single ESPN program leading off with that stuff. Whenever he loses in the playoffs, that's what's always going to happen. Or Lincoln Riley, whenever they allow more than 28 points on defense, and it's, oh my God, how did he employ Alex Grinch for all those years?
Wait, they got Bear Alexander. That's crazy. Their defense was still bad?
Kept Bear Alexander. Oh, I see.
Interesting. So, like, it didn't matter, huh? Okay.
Look, defensive tackles who are getting in the portal, who are getting that money,
they might not be there for the right reason? Huh. What the type of talent you attract there isn't what you... Okay.
Bear Alexander's apartment was sick. I saw that video. That was unreal, man.
And he better get used to living there for a while.
It was unbelievable. And he stayed. Look, he stuck around. But Brian Kelly's in that place. So when things like this happen, that's going to be, for whatever reason, the overarching thing that we love to do in sports. It's not to build you up and bring you down. It's you've been built up and now you're here, and we're not knocking you down to say that you've totally failed, or at least that's not the entire conversation, but it's what are you not doing to get to this top of the mountain? I expect Brian Kelly to get to the top of the mountain. I do. Like, if you're asking me today, do I think Brian Kelly will win a national championship at LSU? My answer is the same as it was when he was hired. I believe that will be the case. But is it possible that a thing like this down the road, maybe not with this specific team, because you're right for all the reasons that you mentioned, but is it possible that with a team down the road that something like this could be the difference if that's the philosophy and if that's the mindset? I say yes.
Yeah, and I agree. And like to be clear, like I want to be, I understand why people don't like Brian Kelly. I didn't like him. I am frustrated as an LSU fan that we do not have defensive tackles. I'm not saying playing no defensive tackles is not my strategy. I do not want to be in a 2-6 whatever. Like I get it. The defensive tackles need to come from somewhere. I was hopeful we would get both of these guys. All three reported it. Some stuff happened. Indiana got a guy before we did. Laugh it up. It's funny because I laughed at it too. It's funny. It's fine to laugh. Like, it's funny. I'd say it like this. Okay, imagine this whole thing is like a poker table, right? And on one end of the table you got Miami, A&M, Ohio State, Ole Miss. They're sitting there, as my mom used to say, spending that money, calling everybody honey. You know what I'm saying? They got the drinks flowing. They got the bottle girls around them. They're doubling down on every bet. And Brian Kelly's sitting there. I think he's got a pretty good hand, but he's not. Now, the thing he did that was an issue is he pointed at the guys at the end of the table and said, look at these jerk-offs over here. And everybody goes, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you call that guy out? Why'd you do that? And it's like, dude, you could have said nothing, to your point. You could have phrased it better. But when you really think about it, those guys that are spending that money calling everybody honey, how many of them have won this championship? And that's what I was saying. Brian Kelly is trying to build a Georgia. He's trying to build this stuff. And I think with LSU's NIL collective, you know what I'm saying? They've said over and over again, like, we're not going to get into these bidding wars. We're going to get people that, you know, a lot of the players on the roster are making money. We're going to get people that want to be here. And then, like I said, just to like follow up this point, the way he sees towards title contention is, let's go get Bryce Underwood. Let's go get DeCorian Moore. Let's go get Harlan Berry. If they land those three guys, it would be the first time a college football team has ever landed the number one quarterback, running back, and wide receiver in the same class. He's spending the money where it matters. Okay, now we could talk about how those guys may never play for LSU. I understand, but to get to that the level that, you know, Georgia has been at and all that, you got to do that. So that's all I'm saying is that, like, do we think that these recruits he's getting, these D-line coaches he's getting, the coaches he's getting, they're just hanging out with Brian Kelly and give him a poor man's discount because they like him? Because the way it's going, nobody likes him. So obviously they're spending lots of money to get guys to go play. That guy, like I said, Underwood could play anywhere. He could go play for Lincoln Riley and go win a Heisman and go be number one in the draft like your boy. And he would say, I don't care. The fact that Brian Kelly is getting on the phone and for the moment closing these deals, I think says more than I'm going to call up and give you $2 million and then I'm going to put my cowboy hat and do a little dance.
Does Brian Kelly have a he hate me tax?
Yes. And you got to build that in, Connor. That's what I'm saying. That's literally it. It's that people don't like Brian Kelly, and he's not going to overpay for people that don't love him. He knows his people.
Shout out to the XFL. If you know, you know. Yeah, I mean, I think that the big picture questions with Kelly will remain, and there will be people where if it's 9-3 and if it's missing out on the 12-team playoff, that sense of urgency is going to be heightened after this year. And that's what some are treating this as kind of the preamble, the runway to, because it is LSU. And it is the place where the three last coaches who did it, they all won titles. And that will be what's going to define Brian Kelly's tenure. It will. And if he doesn't,
it won't be next year. You could write that down. Okay.
Will it be, all right, let's predict LSU national titles. 2028, how's that shaping up? Or 2027, that's Underwood's third, could that be pre-draft seasons? Like 27 title?
I think around that timeline is what Brian Kelly, to start with 39 players on your roster and to finish being truly the best team in a 12-team playoff now, because it's not you get lucky and you get matched with some scrub team like, you know, whatever. I mean, Georgia even got that in the championship game one time. You know, that's going to be a 12-team playoff. To be the top to bottom undisputed best team in college football, I think that is a great timeline, you know?
So I can go get my fake national championship plaque and actually fill it in and put 2027.
Let's not give Brian Kelly any ideas.
Brian Kelly, I'd like your unfiltered thoughts on national championship plaques. Go.
I'm tackling you if you ask that question at media days.
It's that will not happen. Ben Mintz, you know, of Barstool fame, shout out Mincy. Obviously knows the state of Louisiana very, very well. You know, like he needs an edit button. Brian Kelly needs an edit button. If Brian Kelly, or the dump button, that's what it's called. Yeah. Just mute him. Just mute his mic. We need
like one of those old school canes. I need like Bo Davis with the big cane, just pulling him off the stage whenever he says something dumb.
God, it's unbelievable. But nonetheless, he gave us something to talk about. He definitely did in this early time in May. Any other thoughts other than Brian Kelly should just not say that he's not buying players?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the forum to kind of talk it out. I think that, you know, I'll tell y'all when the sky's falling at LSU. I'll tell y'all when to be worried. You know, most people get on me for being too negative on LSU on here. And I just think this is going according to plan. I think that, again, like I said, listen to the people that are mad and think about why they're mad and how it benefits them. And that's my big thing. I love to tell y'all the things I don't like about Brian Kelly. You heard me every week, 2 times on this podcast, screaming about the defense and how horrible it was. And I wish we had some defensive tackles, man. But Bo Davis is going to find them. Check those DBs, though. That's where the real problem lies.
Fair enough. All right, let's kick it to Justin. Wanted to get some perspective on a lot of different Auburn things. Somebody that knows that program inside and out. So great insight from Justin. Here he is. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Justin Hokanson, who covers all things Auburn for On3. Justin, be honest with me. When I tweeted last week that Auburn hadn't beat a Power 5 team who finished with a winning record since October 30th, 2021, and that it had gone 0-17 in those matchups since then. You fact checked me, right?
Well, I knew that. I was very aware. Of they hadn't beat a ranked team since Ole Miss. I had not gone and looked at how many they played since then. So I guess so being 0-17 since then is pretty surprising. I didn't know they had played that many ranked teams in that time span. But I definitely was very aware that Ole Miss was the last time they won a ranked game. And shoot, I mean, trying to even think back to 2020, which was COVID. First game, Kentucky might have been preseason top 25, maybe. But I mean, even that season, I don't know. I mean, I think they may have upset A&M. I don't know if they ranked, like, even that season, I'm not sure. Kentucky might have been a preseason top, because that was the first game of the year in that COVID. But yeah, I was aware of the Ole Miss thing, and I agreed with the reason I retweeted it. I said this has got to change is because it's one of the talking points of people that I talk to, not just fans but donors. When people ask what's a successful season for Auburn next year, I'm like, it's sort of two-sided. A better record than 6-6 is one part, like go up in wins, but it's also what I hear from donors is like beat somebody, be competitive, don't get close, like get over the hump. Like if they go 6-6 next year and beat, now this would be weird if they went 6-6 and beat Oklahoma. That means they're losing to somebody they shouldn't. So it'd be more like if they go 7-5 and one of those 7 is beating Oklahoma or something like that, that's a big step forward. So it's, yes, they want to see more wins, obviously, but it's beat somebody legit. Like actually get over the hump and show that you can compete and beat a ranked team.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, because I might have butchered that. It's 0-17 against teams who have Power 5 teams who have finished with a winning record.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
So even more like it's so you're talking about not even beating decent teams, and then when the New Mexico State losses, like things like that happen, it kind of puts things in perspective even more. But it's kind of crazy because you mentioned how close you can be in those games, and I think even for somebody like myself, I didn't realize that until looking it up, because when you play Georgia and you play Alabama competitively, it doesn't feel like a team that's not necessarily in those places to be able to get those quality wins. But you're right. I mean, it just feels like, man, you have to be able to beat those teams that actually matter. Let's talk about Hugh Freeze and what he said with Cole and Greg about Payton Thorne, a comment that has kind of made the rounds the last couple of days here. Freeze said he didn't want to spend $1 million on a quarterback, and that he would rather develop, Thorne and the rest of the quarterbacks in that room, which, had a lot of reaction, understandably so. What was your reaction to that decision? Not so much the comment, because obviously the decision was pretty much made in early December.
Yeah, the comment is not shocking. That's something that I'd heard going back to the winter portal. I mean, I talked about it when Riley Leonard hit the portal. I told our people from day one, listen, his approach, especially to quarterback, is he's just conservative on NIL right now. Like he's a little stubborn in giving in and paying any player a lot of money. He thinks about culture. He thinks about locker room. He's trying to build this thing from the ground up, high school wise, in his locker room. And he's just very, I think, nervous to play the NIL game and just bring whoever in and then try to manage a guy coming in and feeling entitled or whatever. Like, obviously you're going to play the portal game, but a quarterback's different. They're demanding more money. They're going to come in thinking they should start. And so it's just, he was already a little hesitant about that. And so the fact that he said he didn't want to pay a guy, that's not surprising. That's kind of what happened with Riley Leonard. That was pretty close to happening. And then they demanded a certain number that he was like, we're not doing it. As far as kind of his comments about Payton Thorne, I mean, he's been honest about that. Like, you go back to now after the bowl game, he was very much, we got to reassess things and I'm not happy. And I think he felt pressure from boosters. Like after the bowl game, it was like, we got to go get somebody. But I think he just sort of evaluated a little bit more, looked at the NIL thing. He just couldn't get over the hump to trying to pay a player. And I think he also reevaluated last year what a lot of people, I think Auburn fans sort of know, but even I don't think people have a full grasp of how dysfunctional the offense was last season. And I'm not making an excuse for Payton Thorne, but there was no offensive identity. I mean, most of the time during a week, there was no real playbook. It would just be week from week to week. Like, what are we doing this week? And then within the same game, you'd have two guys calling plays. Within the same series, you could have Freeze interjecting himself calling plays. You had a rotation of quarterbacks. I mean, it was a difficult situation for Payton Thorne to excel in. I mean, that's just a fact. That's true. And so I think evaluating who Payton was last year is difficult. You kind of got to go back to what Freeze mentions a lot, and I think is fair, is look at Payton's best season at Michigan State when he had some really good receivers, a couple that are in the NFL right now. He was really good. And you might say, well, duh. If you have NFL receivers, you're going to be good. Well, yeah. Duh. Like, sometimes that's what it is. Like, a quarterback's good when he's got good players, and he's not as good when he doesn't. So I think they just decided, look, I think Payton's got the intelligence. He's got the skills and the athletic ability to run this offense. I'd rather devote money to Keandre Lambert-Smith or like whatever. I need to build around him and stick with Payton versus go get a quarterback to bring him in. The dynamic of the quarterback room changes, and then I still haven't upgraded at receiver or whatever it might be. So he just made that decision and says, if I build up, I think Payton can win us football games. And he rolled the dice. We'll know more this year, truly, about what kind of quarterback Payton can be, because I think the offensive identity and everything behind the scenes will be a lot more cohesive than it was last year.
You mentioned Riley Leonard, Grayson McCall, Cam Ward, Will Howard. Which one of those had any shot of happening at Auburn?
Cam Ward, they were after, but again, that was an NIL thing where they just, everything I was hearing was there was just not a comfort level with what he wanted. Like what Cam Ward was demanding, it just was not something that Freeze and those guys were comfortable doing. Grayson McCall was a guy that very probably would have happened last year, but there was some academic things and going from Coastal, and it didn't work. And then I think this year, a year later, it was sort of a different dynamic, and I didn't hear his name much. But that was very close to happening a year ago. But this time around, I mean, outside of Riley Leonard, they didn't flirt with as many. I mean, Caden Salter from Liberty was like, hey, could he maybe come over? I know a year ago they thought, was Michael Pratt going to enter the portal? Like, there were different guys, but after Leonard kind of didn't go that way, I just never got the sense that they really made a strong push for anybody in particular. And a lot of it just came back to looking at it going, we're going to bring in a guy and we're going to pay him what? Hugh, that's still a struggle for him. And I think he couldn't quite get over that hump in terms of paying and so then you're like, okay, well, what would you be comfortable paying? You go down the line. Well, now I'm going to go get a guy that doesn't demand as much, but he's probably not the caliber of player. Well, why would I bring him into the room? And he also didn't want to have 5 quarterbacks. He's got Payton Thorne, he's got Holden Gerner, he's got Hank Brown, and now he's got Walker White. He doesn't want 5 quarterbacks in the room. That was another issue. If somebody had decided to transfer, it would have maybe made sense to bring somebody in, but he really didn't want 5 quarterbacks in that room.
I do think, though, the post-spring year 1 quarterback transfers, you're set up to fail. You really are, and it's not an ideal time to be able to hit the market. And for those saying that everything that Payton Thorne did last year was a direct result of him and him only, I would say, not necessarily. But you would hope that those guys, the Will Levises of the world, who he made that decision early in spring but didn't get to arrive on campus until after he graduated, and then a Joe Burrow, like, you saw the improvement down the stretch. You didn't necessarily see that improvement with Payton Thorne and some of the things that still felt like were so limited in that offense. Freeze has always had that year 2 guy, though. Like, his starters are always like second-year guys. How much do you think that factored in, and how much do you think that could possibly set up someone like Hank Brown to come in and set up and potentially be the guy if we get another scenario in which Payton Thorne doesn't cut it?
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think the offense as a whole started to tick up at the end of the year, but part of that was they had a run against Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt, and so of course it looked better. And then they played well against Alabama, right? Like, that game they should have won. But I still go back to when we're sort of like what you said about, did we see Payton get better? Yes and no. Like, I thought his operation of things got better. I mean, if you really dug into like his last 6 games or so, and looked at what he did and said, okay, we'll give him 25 passes a game. He only threw 13 or 14 or 15. Give him 25. His numbers were pretty good. He just didn't have the quantity in some of those games to even throw. They were running the ball, and he'd run the ball. And so it was a little bit difficult to sort of evaluate. I thought he played fairly well. The bowl game was just a mess. But there's a lot of reasons that go into that. But again, I just go back to the disjointed nature of the offense last year in the game planning and the preparation. I just think Philip Montgomery's a good play caller, but there was not the preparation behind the scenes with the quarterbacks the way that there needed to be. And it was just kind of messy. And so I think Freeze taking over play calling for the most part. Derek Nix comes in. They've run things together. Ken Austin's your quarterback coach. They've all been together. Ken Austin and Payton Thorne have a fantastic relationship. There is a lot more cohesion there, and now it's on Payton. The cohesion's there. The identity is going to be there. You got Cam Coleman. You got Keandre Lambert-Smith. You've got Rivaldo Fairweather. You've got Jarquez Hunter. Offensive line's decent. Now it's kind of on Payton. Everything's there to be good. As far as Hank Brown, good player, young player, kind of a gamer, but I don't think he's there yet. Like it's Payton's job completely until he goes out there and doesn't perform. If he goes out there first couple of games, I mean, non-conference games, they host Cal, but you won't really know what this team's about till Oklahoma. They play, well, I mean, you got Arkansas at home, but that'll tell us a little bit. Oklahoma will tell us a lot. So if Payton goes out there and plays well, it's his job. He would have to go out there and really perform poorly for them to go, okay, that's not great. Do we need to reassess? I mean, Hank's got some sort of raw ability, but he's not there yet. Holden doesn't have the mobility. That hurts you. And Walker's not. Walker's he's a true freshman. He's not there yet either. So Payton needs to be the man. Hank's got some skills, but he doesn't have nearly the experience that Payton does. So I think it's Payton's job, and I think he probably has a pretty decent leash just because of the talent and experience gap combined is pretty big, I think.
I was going to set the over-under at 1.5 Hank Brown starts for you this season. Will you take the over-under on that?
I would take the under. I think Payton would have to it would have to be an epic collapse for them to pull him. Because if you do, first of all, you're going to go a handful of games into the season before you realize, okay, Payton's not getting the job. You're going to give him a chance. By then you're into the SEC. And I don't know, man. I think it would have to be an epic collapse. And I think Payton's a good player. I think Payton's very smart, and I think he's a really good athlete. I think he's a good enough player to make this offense go. I think he'll perform fairly well. Could Hank get some snaps at times? Yeah, but I don't think Hank – I think Payton will be the guy, the starter every game. I do. If he's not, then the season's going to be – it's going to be a problem.
I liked the approach that Hugh had in the portal with the receiver position of not just saying, oh, well, we got Cam Coleman, we got this young group of receivers, we're going to be good. The addition of Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think, was really important. Something that I talked about a few weeks ago on the show, but it just felt like last year's passing game desperately lacked the things that he does well, the interchangeable ability, veteran presence, can kind of do, things a little bit with a little bit more variety than I think this offense had at times last year. What type of presence do you expect him to be able to bring to that room?
Yeah, that was a big one. And you sort of have to keep it in perspective. Nobody's saying Keandre Lambert-Smith's an All-American. But he's really good. But for Auburn, he's huge. And for Auburn, he's huge. Cam Coleman's got all this ability, but putting all the pressure on Cam Coleman as a true freshman is just not – very few true freshmen can just come in, be the only real threat, and just dominate. That's just very unlikely. And so the addition of somebody like Keandre Lambert-Smith, who's not only talented and a playmaker and can make things happen after the catch, he's got experience, he's a veteran – just having one other legitimate option at receiver is so big for Payton. It's big so that defenses can't just go, well, look, guys, they got Cam. That's the only person we got to worry about over the top is Cam. Well, now, no, you do have another guy you have to respect. And then you think about somebody like Robert Lewis from Georgia State, who's a good player in the slot. I think a guy that you're going to be able to rely on, a smart player in the slot. Even somebody like Sam Jackson from Cal, we'll see how he kind of comes on, but he's really dynamic when he gets the ball. But just one more guy on the outside is such a big deal for this offense, a big deal for Payton, and might free things up for Cam. And hopefully he brings some veteran presence as well to sort of help Cam become a better player. But it's funny, now they're going to go into the season with, I think, two guys, Cam Coleman and Keandre Lambert-Smith, that, if you're in trouble, you could kind of just throw in their direction and they're decent chance they'll make a play. I don't even know. I mean, you'd have to go back to Seth Williams in 2019, when you had a guy that you could kind of just toss it up that would make a play. I mean, it just doesn't happen a lot. Before that, maybe Darius Slayton in 17. There just hasn't been a bunch of guys, and I think Auburn might have two. And I don't know the last time they had a pair, maybe Slayton and Ryan Davis in 2017, but pretty rare when I think they've got two guys that are going to be pretty good and will be guys that Payton Thorne can rely on in a tough situation.
It's probably pretty hard to keep expectations in check with a guy named Cam on the Plains. Difficult thing to do. Is there a guy that he kind of reminds you of so far that doesn't feel like it's totally crazy to throw out there?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Covering Auburn, I don't see a lot of studs at receiver, as you can imagine. So I don't know. He's just, the one thing that stands out about him is, like, everybody can look at him and go, oh, he looks great. Like, he's tall. He strides really well. He's well built. The thing that stands out when you watch him in practice a little bit, and you saw it in A-Day, like the catch, one of the touchdown he makes, the corner is in great position. He keeps his eye on the ball, and he catches it sort of, the guy's all over him, and he makes the catch. The other one he lays out. The one thing that Hugh talked about that you can't sort of really know until you start to see it is his ball skills. He says he tracks the ball and catches the ball and sort of knows when to jump and knows how to position himself as good as anybody that he's seen. And those are the things that you can't always know in high school. Maybe it's the talent level, whatever. You get him on campus and you're like, man, he tracks it really well. And his hands are out and he reaches out. It's the little things that make great receivers, not the physical tools. And that's what he seems to already show. And so I don't know about comparing him to anybody. He kind of looks like, I hate comparisons. He's sort of, if I had to say who's the first person he sort of looks like, it'd be like AJ Green, like lean, tall, but can also run, good ball skills. Like, that's the sort of type player he looks like. Can he be that? Who knows? But he sort of looks like that guy, a leaner guy. He's not, Julio was big and physical. Julio looked like a freaking defensive end sometimes, but AJ was sort of that lean guy, but could make every catch. Cam sort of looks like that when you watch him.
I thought the smartest thing that Hugh did last year was, as painful as it was for people that had to watch it, especially in person like you did, but was just not totally abandon the passing game, because you can't overhaul your receiver room and get those guys if you're operating like a service academy. You just can't. How different should this offense look now that he feels like he has more of that type of personnel that he wants in there, especially with that run-pass balance, knowing this is year 2 with Payton Thorne, make of that what you will. But how different will this offense look with that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll help. He wants to take some more shots, and I don't think they could do enough of that. Obviously, they'll still run the ball. Rivaldo Fairweather is going to be a really important piece. He's got to be a little more consistent. There's games where he dropped some easy passes, and there's games where he made some great catches. But I think just the ability to try to get downfield a little bit. I mean, there's parts – I mean, once you got into last year, I mean, you go back and look, and the thought of taking a shot downfield was almost pointless. They just did not have anybody that you could rely on to say, hey, let's take a shot. Back shoulder throws were like almost a wasted down. I remember being at the LSU game and watching them early in the game try to throw some back shoulders to some guys, and it was like completely pointless. I mean, the receivers couldn't make the play. There wasn't good chemistry there. There was just no threat downfield, none. I mean, any thought of trying to go downfield was almost a desperation type play. So to me, it's just trying to get downfield a little bit more, but now having a couple of guys that you feel like you can rely on a little bit more to make a play. You've got a little more confidence calling those plays. So I think that's going to be the challenge. I mean, obviously in that RPO stuff, you'll run the screens and you'll run the slants and stuff like that. But can they get downfield more where Cam just makes a play, or Keandre Lambert-Smith catches a dig route and can turn and run after the catch? Those are the things that I think they need is the bigger plays, because they couldn't execute their way down the field. They didn't have that kind of ability. So that you need those big plays nowadays. And so that'll probably be the biggest difference. It got to the point last year was like, they didn't even really try downfield. It was pointless. Everything was short, didn't go anywhere, and it was just kind of a lost cause.
I'd like to think that Freeze in that pitch to Lambert Smith said, hey, you know how you just came from a place where James Franklin publicly shamed throwing deep? I promise I'll get you at least 3 deep targets per game. And I don't even care if it's not even close. We're just going to at least look your way downfield for the sake of doing that, because Auburn desperately, they need something like that. Him taking over play calling duties is one of the more interesting storylines, I think, early on in the SEC this year. But it's an interesting conversation with patience versus panic, because he's a year removed from getting up at SEC Media Days and saying, you know what, I don't think I'm one of the premier play callers in the sport like I once was. And he's going back on that. Part of me wonders how much he thinks about the fact that his predecessor was fired Halloween weekend year 2. And he's looking at this going, man, I got to be able to show that I know what I'm doing on that side of the ball, because that's why I was brought in. How much do you think that factored into that decision, or any of the personnel decisions that he made going into the season?
Yeah, it was an interesting deal, because the other part of what he talked about when he first arrived was, he said, with how college football's changed and the importance of NIL and the importance of where our roster is and getting it back to where it needs to be, he thought, I need to focus more on recruiting, and I need to hire an OC, and I need that guy to be the OC, and I need to focus solely for at least the first year, if it would have worked out maybe longer, on recruiting, roster, getting to know NIL, figuring out what we can do and what we can't do. And so that was kind of his reasoning for not being the OC. A lot of his reasoning for hiring an OC, he thought he needed to be more of a CEO. And really early in the season, game 1, game 2, he was very open about saying, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with not being more involved. I'm struggling with letting somebody completely run it, and I don't really know all that terminology, so I don't want to get involved and make things more complicated, but I want to be involved. And then, of course, it got to the point where he felt like he needed to get involved, but he's very open about, hey, I'm struggling with this now. And so I think it's probably a combination of being a year in the program, probably felt like he sort of had a grasp of sort of recruiting, roster, NIL, sort of what that looked like, and now maybe I go back to being OC. The other thing I think is, think about who he brought in, Derek Nix. Think about who he promoted, Ken Austin. The other part of what he did offseason was he wasn't comfortable last year, not just in the play calling OC situation. He wasn't completely comfortable, I don't think, with the staff, which can happen first year. And so you look at who he brought in, Nix, who he knew before, promotes Ken Austin, brings back Maurice Harris, who's now an analyst from Liberty. He brought guys, promotes Vontrell King-Williams, who was at Liberty and who was already on staff. He very much wanted to build this second staff on just complete comfort. He wanted to feel like he knew them all and he's coached with them all, and there's going to be zero lost in translation in terms of his messaging. And I'm not saying that did or didn't happen last year, but clearly there was a discomfort with him. So that, I think, factored in too about his change in philosophy on OC, was bringing Derek Nix in, who he's completely comfortable with, and knowing that he can get involved in there, and it should be a good situation. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, technically, Derek Nix is the play caller, right? We went through all that with Lane Kiffin and his public tweeting, but Freeze is going to be, I think, the primary play caller during the games, and Nix will be the coordinator and will certainly be a part of it. But I have to think that Freeze is going to be the primary play caller during the games. Yeah.
Is Rhett Lashley the last returning play caller or returning offensive coordinator at Auburn? Is that right?
Probably, man. You go back to 17 was Chip Lindsey, 18 was Chip Lindsey.
What about Dillingham in there? Was he 19?
Dillingham was there. That was, I think, that was 19. So I think they went
Morris,
Chip Lindsey,
20.
17, 18, Dillingham, but Malzahn took back play calling in 19 with Bo Nix as a freshman. And then it was Malzahn in 20, and then you get into the Harsin, and then it was I can't even remember who his first OC was. You had Keesaw the second year. The first year was Bobo. You had Bobo 21, Keesaw 22, Montgomery 23. Yeah. And, I mean, so you have to go back to 17, 18 was the last time you had consecutive OC calling plays in 2 seasons. It's been, that's why you look at like Bo Nix when he was here and then he goes to Oregon, he had like 5 OCs. And so it's just been offense at Auburn has been difficult, man, since 2017. And really 17 was a great year. 16 was a bunch of good running, but not good passing. 15 was a mess. Then you go back to 14 with Nick Marshall was a pretty good 14 and 13 with Nick Marshall. Whatever. But you're talking about 10 years. You could probably go, if you included 13, you're talking about 3. I think 3 seasons that of a high level offensive unit. 3 in 11 seasons.
It's crazy to think about that turnover. It's not ideal. It is definitely not ideal.
No.
I'll get you out of here with this one. I set the Auburn ceiling at 8-4 because of that aforementioned stat about beating teams at the Power 5 level who finished with a winning record. But you kind of look at it and you're like, all right, well, the decade that you just brought up, it's an Auburn team that's got 4 losses in each of those seasons during the 14 playoff era. I won't ask you to set a ceiling from a win-loss standpoint, but what is your expectation? Where do you kind of set the line at for this group?
I'm probably with you. I would debate. I think the floor is 6-6. The floor has got to be. Cannot go lower than that. Auburn should never be lower than that. Like they should be higher than that anyway. But I think they're 6-6. I mean, you got 4 non-conference games. Cal at home. You should win those. You've got Vanderbilt at home. You got Arkansas at home. That's 6. I think no, anything can happen. We saw New Mexico State, but that's 6, and then you get into Oklahoma at home, which they'll, I think right now it's an early kind of 3-point spread. You got A&M at home. It's kind of an early 3-point spread. Auburn, the underdog in both of those. Those are toss-ups. Kentucky on the road, probably a toss-up. So like I'd say there's I think 6 is a good number, and then there's 3 that I think they'll probably be just a slight underdog, but they could win. Win them all, you're at 9. Win 1, you're at 7. Win 2, you're at 8. So, I think that's fair. Missouri, pretty good team. That's tough. Bama, Georgia, it gets tough. But I mean, I think there's 6 is the floor, and I think you're looking at if you pull just 1 upset, you're at 7. If you pull 2 upsets, you're at 8. Oklahoma, Texas A&M game. I don't know that those teams are that much better than where Auburn is right now. I mean, they might be a little bit better, but I don't. At home, Auburn absolutely could win either one of those games. So I think 9 would be like ultimate ceiling. That's asking them to win all 6 and then win 3 more games that they're probably the underdog in. That's pretty tough for any team. So there's no way you can go above 9. I think 8's probably a more realistic ceiling.
That's a very fair answer, I think, all things considered. Justin, great stuff, man. We'll do it again sometime soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Will, pitch me time. We are doing easiest 2024 schedule for SEC teams. Mm-hmm. I think that could include non-conference play. We didn't really clarify that, I don't think.
I think a schedule is a schedule. Like there's some, we've seen historically with like a Florida or a South Carolina where it's like, guys, like we got to play this other team over here that you guys don't. So I think a schedule is a schedule.
I will say, and I talk with, shout out our producer, Daniel Waller, who's just been absolutely awesome for us and has been a huge addition to the team and everything that we're doing.
A king.
He is very much so. And I we watch a lot of British Bake Off and stuff like that, and it shows every once in a while. I promise I have a purpose for what I'm saying.
Okay.
They say schedule, and it throws me off every time. If we were talking about schedules today, I would not be able to keep a straight face. Schedules is the way that the word should be said, not schedules.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just a fact. I didn't think that was like a take or anything. British people are interesting.
That's a take.
Yeah, I whenever I've talked to British people, I went to lunch, it's the fun because I'm Cajun and they're British. I'm like, look, I get what we do with the English language, but you guys? Like, come on, y'all made this up and you can't do it.
Yeah, there's some words, aluminium, that I'm just like, come on. Yeah. That's not, you don't really do that, do you?
No, they do. They do it all. Yeah, they do.
Exactly. All right, let's go to, we have some really, really good response here. Saturday Down South Instagram. If you are not already following, go do that right just now. Let's start with this one from Andrea Cat STL. gonna guess that's St. Louis. Hopefully she's not a Cardinal fan. Andrea says
That would be Andrea, by the way.
Oh, that's Andrea. Okay.
Yep.
There
Don't
we
worry,
go.
my girl's dad does the same thing, but I got to fight for the. That's a European pronunciation as well. Andrea versus Andrea.
European pronunciations are just throwing us off today.
Mm-hmm.
Totally off track. All right. Andrea says Arkansas avoids Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma. Razorbacks have an easy schedule. Any year in which you get to avoid Alabama and Georgia, even post Nick Saban world, that's a win. Huge, huge win. I wouldn't call it easy. I'd say it sets up better than others do. But I'm still looking at it going, you have a road game at Oklahoma State that's going to be incredibly difficult. You have to go to Auburn, and that's just
anytime you could stop the sentence right there because that's where dreams really go to die.
Yep, and then the game at Jerry World against A&M. So like you look at those 3 games, and that's probably why Arkansas hasn't been at the forefront of this conversation for me of easiest schedule, because I look at 3 September games and I'm thinking, man, you're going to be a dog in all 3 of those, and if you win one of them, that'll be considered a win. Whereas like I feel like when it comes to schedules, if you have games like that already from the jump, that's usually not the best situation for you. But again, when you don't have that absolute no chance whatsoever game against Alabama, which Arkansas fans, that's what it is for you at this point. You can't argue with that. I mean,
at what point? That's all new. It's a whole new team.
The streak still exists. Very much. But yeah, I mean, the only thing that would push me more so in this direction, I don't like that they still, even in the month of November, have Ole Miss, Texas, and Mizzou. There's 3 teams that, New Year's Six Bowl playoff, Texas playoff. I don't like the way that sets up. So I can't get on board quite with Arkansas having the easiest, but that is the strongest argument, or at least it has been the strongest argument to a strength of schedule discussion is like avoid Alabama and Georgia. You do that, you're in good shape.
You know what? This is the first one of these so far I think I just straight up disagree with, because I'm looking at this schedule and I'm just like, this feels really, especially for where Arkansas kind of is right now, they're going to be kind of fighting for a bowl game, are they not? I mean, certainly if they bring back what they did last year, I think that we all kind of think they'll take a step forward. They almost have to. But that being said, like there's even like Mizzou is no longer a walkthrough now. Like if you're Arkansas, I don't know how you look at the schedule and think this is good. Like I understand that there are harder teams in the SEC, but being that they're like, I'll put it to you like this: like if Georgia had this schedule, I wouldn't be like mad, Yeah,
I mean, you've got 5 teams on there that won at least 9 games last year.
Yeah.
And that's not even including Oklahoma State, who obviously has Ollie Gordon coming back. And that's going to be a difficult matchup to be able to go into Stillwater and win. So, yeah, I mean, that's – I still think that schedule is difficult. We might get some pushback on that, but still a tricky schedule. At least the good news is you don't have last year whatever was it, like a month and a half that you went in between home games, which was so unbelievably bizarre the way that set up. So Arkansas doesn't have a
terrifying road environment such as the swamp. Who could win there?
Arkansas could win there. That's
exactly
who could win. Yeah. But I like where the logic is starting out here. Even if we disagree with that, even if that pitch didn't sell us, I still think that at least makes some sense. Okay, Ryan Glauner, we got it covered. Ryan says, Ole Miss, and I am effing here for it. Ran through the gauntlet last year, came out 11-2. Now's the time for the playoff, baby. Let's go, Rebs. Yeah, man. It really could not set up better. It couldn't. If Ole Miss had Florida's schedule, we would not be having these conversations about Ole Miss. But instead, it sets up with one matchup against a team that went to a New Year's Six Bowl last year, and that's Georgia. And it's Georgia at home, which, look, that disparity is what it is. It is still Georgia. Ole Miss will likely be an underdog in that setting. But, man, you look at the way that it sets up everywhere else.
Yep.
And your most difficult games besides that are home against Oklahoma and at LSU, an LSU team that you beat last year. It's been a little bit more back and forth in recent
That
memory.
game was back and forth. Let me tell you what.
That game was back and forth, Will. You're absolutely right. It was. It just sets up so unbelievably well. I mean, even the non-conference matchup, you got to go to Wake Forest. Yeah, all right, but
Yeah.
that schedule, you will never get a better SEC schedule, probably, at least in terms of looking at it from the preseason. Obviously, these things can change in a significant way, but it's hard to ask for a much better road to Atlanta than what Ole Miss has.
Ole Miss has something that's unique in that they have lots of opportunities for quality wins while playing teams that they should be better than. So it's
Good
like
point.
when you kind of look through their schedule, it's like, well, Kentucky is usually a hard out, so you usually get credit for that. The only thing that worries me is, of course, going to South Carolina and then going to LSU. But then they got the bye week before they host Oklahoma. So you could even go 1-1 in those games and then beat Oklahoma, and you're right back where you need to be. And you got that nice little home game too. Again, say like, I hate to use the quality losses thing, right? But it's like either of those would be kind of a fine loss because lots of teams have lost at South Carolina in weird ways. Clemson, right? Like we were talking about, good Clemson team. And like, again, losing in Baton Rouge, no worries there. But then if you come back and can rebound, okay, against Oklahoma, Arkansas, we'll see. And I think like Georgia's a hard team. So like you're not going undefeated with the schedule for sure, but you have a really competitive, like you could be the best whatever win team you have. You could be the best 9-win team, best 10-win team. And when you're looking for a playoff, that's exactly what you want to be, right?
Yeah, you are. You very much are. And going 10-2, I still make the case that Ole Miss could very well have a path to the playoff, even if it doesn't include a path to Atlanta with a mark like that, which feels very, very doable. Gosh, I can close my eyes and picture Ole Miss being 5-0, coming off a win against Kentucky or something like that, and with where they're going to start in the preseason poll, you could be talking about Ole Miss as a top 5 team, and then it's South Carolina at night, and it's just a game that just gives everything Ole Miss can handle. Maybe not a game that South Carolina pulls off some sort of Tennessee like upset or something like that, but where Williams-Brice, even if South Carolina starts off, 3 losses or something like that to that point, and South Carolina is just rocking, absolutely bananas, and maybe Ole Miss gets caught looking ahead to LSU or something like that. But circle that one on your calendar. I'm going to have to do some sort of sleeper game breakdown either for SDS or just here on the pod. But yeah, that game against South Carolina, October 5th, just beware for it. That's a good case, though. It's a good case for easy schedule.
We need to get our guy Brad to record one of those like noises they do in the stadium so we can just play that as a drop. Brad does such good work for 24/7, but like I learn new stuff about South Carolina for him like every other day. So like it's cool like that. I love that environment is where I'm going. Like I think that's underrated. But like I said, if you lose that game and you're Ole Miss, like you kind of still get benefit of the doubt. It's not even like Bama losing that game when they did. It's like you could be fine. So I really it's a statement schedule.
It is very much so. All right, Tyler Beatty. No, not Tyler Beatty. I'm thinking his running backs.
He's back. He's getting yet another carry, like the Undertaker.
Tyler Beatty just got 25 more carries. Tyler Ladley 2 says, "Don't get me started on the pathetic inaugural conference schedule they gifted Texas, and the opposite they gifted Oklahoma. It's laughable." Finally, we got some Texas Oklahoma bad blood in the comments. Good, because man, We've been waiting, and I agree. If Tyler didn't say this, I was going to.
Mm-hmm.
The disparity between Texas and Oklahoma's year 1 SEC schedule is so significant, Will. It is crazy. And it's not just the way that it sets up in non-conference play. I think Texas is super fortunate to be able to get Michigan in Ann Arbor with all that turnover, with Harbaugh off to the NFL, all those different things. And Oklahoma, I don't want to say it's a favorable non-conference draw because, Houston is obviously in a different place, but don't sleep on Tulane, team that can give even a team like Ole Miss all that it can handle. But it's so significantly different once you get into conference play with Texas and Oklahoma. Texas has obviously that game against Georgia, the game with $5 million hotel stays that are going to force Georgia fans into taking out 4th and 5th mortgages on their homes. It's a tragedy, really is. But outside of that, they do not have They do not have a true SEC road game until Vandy, and that is October 26th.
I mean, is that an SEC road game, Connor?
It's not. That place will be burnt orange.
Right.
Their first non-Vandy true SEC road game, mid-November.
Oh, man, poor Vandy. Why are they going to send Texas fans to Nashville in year one? They're going to love that. They're going to be everywhere. Like, thinking about the burnt orange and the white all over Nashville. Oh, that whole stadium is going to be a home stadium for them.
It very much will be. Texas fans will, I would hope, make the trip. Who knows, though? They might be broke from, well, you know what? Take the prop.
Texas. That's the other part of it. It's a sweet weekend. I thought about doing it for LSU a couple times.
All right, Texas fans, here's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Put all your properties, if you haven't already done so, on
Your
Airbnb,
ranches.
on Vrbo. Get your money the week before for that Georgia game, right?
Yep.
And then the week after, you just finance the time of your life the following week in Nashville. Go to that Vandy game, make a weekend.
Throw a chair off a bar roof.
There you go. That's the way to do it, man. The schedule is it's just so unbelievably favorable. Like in terms of they don't even the amount of 8-win teams that they face: Georgia, Oklahoma, Michigan. That's it. That's a dream scenario for Texas. And meanwhile, Oklahoma, they've got that regular season over/under of 7.5. Not because of their roster, it's because of their schedule. Their schedule is so hard, man. Like, I'm trying to figure out. I have no idea. I'm telling you right now, I have no idea what I'm going to do with Oklahoma in the Crystal Ball series, because I could see this going so many different ways. They might have the most variance of any SEC team because of how difficult their schedule is perceived in the preseason, with having to even hosting Tennessee, right? A game that I think College Game Day will make the trip to Norman. We talked about that with Chris Plank. And then you go to Jordan-Hare, bye week, Texas, obviously that showdown, monumental, back and forth. And then you still, to end the season, you're still going to have to face Ole Miss. You're still going to have to face a Mizzou team, Alabama, and LSU. All of those teams finished in the top 12. And that's just waiting for you in the latter half of your schedule. It's really, really difficult. I'm usually not that person.
Yeah.
Oklahoma got a raw deal, man. They got a raw deal year one.
Yeah, this is like okay. So a couple of things. Let's go back to Texas really quick. So they have like what is the most like the best thing, which is a Michigan team that will probably be like at least top 10, probably top like 5 or 6, right? In week 2.
So it looks really good.
Yeah. But it's not the logos, the jerseys might be Michigan, but that's not the team that played last year. They lost the greatest leader in history in JJ McCarthy, right? The Yogi,
True.
Right? So you can't undervalue what he brings to the table. They lost Harbaugh, right? Who's going to drink milk, right? So point being, but like in all seriousness though, like say what you will about Moore and like the internal vibes they got going on, but like that's going to be a big test, and it's one that it feels like weirdly Texas has gotten way more ready for, considering that, I mean, weirdly that Michigan like won a national title. Like that's the crazy thing is that, yeah, you lose Harbaugh is pretty much the only story there, right? Because if you're still there, if he was still there, you'd probably pick Michigan in Michigan.
No, they lost so much talent to the NFL, man. Like you got a new starting quarterback. What? I don't even know what Michigan's quarterback situation is going to look like.
They're handing the ball off, brother. It don't matter.
That is true. They will. They absolutely will.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are just a lot of questions on that Michigan offense, especially.
Yeah.
That I would probably still pick Texas. If I'm saying that Texas is the biggest threat to Georgia to win a national championship, then yeah, that's a game that, in theory, this version of Texas should go on the road and be able to win that game.
And they should smoke them. And that's like the thing is that, like, it's like I'll pick on my own team, like 2020 LSU, where they were ranked like number 6 and they played Mississippi State. Mississippi State was like, oh boy, this is going to be on the graphics forever. We'd be the number 16. We smoke these guys are not a number 16, but you guys are about to find that out, and it's going to be too late by the time we have the win. So same deal there. It's going to have a chance to like get them off to a hot start. And then, yeah, to your point, it's like, okay, I'm not too worried about Mississippi State. No offense to like what Levy's building over there. Then you got a bye week. And yeah, and it's like, well, you pretty much, after you should comfortably handle Michigan with, your incumbent starter quarterback, all SEC guy type of thing, you can pretty much start preparing for that Oklahoma game, because you shouldn't have anyone on your level. I mean, for a month and a half, you got a bye week. It's really just the Michigan game. So that's the key, is that if you beat Oklahoma, it doesn't matter if you lose to Georgia. You know what I'm saying? At that point, it's Georgia. Like, who cares? So, like, I wouldn't even worry about Georgia. I would worry about Oklahoma, because if you lose to Georgia, it's not a problem. You lose to Oklahoma again, then you got problems, because then you probably end up losing to Georgia too. And so, point being, I would just, I hate to say take a schedule loss against Georgia, but it's hard to go 2-0. If you go 2-0 against Oklahoma and Georgia, again, kind of like we talked about Ole Miss, like, you need to just be okay with losing games, because then boom, Vandy and Nashville, another away, and then like a bye week, and then you really don't have another hard game. Like, A&M is rebuilding too. So yeah, I think you just got to be able to take a schedule loss in the middle of your year and just live to win the war.
There are 6 teams on that Oklahoma schedule: LSU, Alabama, Mizzou, Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee. That was 6, right? Yeah, I think that was 6.
Sure.
Who won at least 9 games last year?
Yeah.
And Texas has 3 teams that won 8 games on its schedule.
Yeah. It's so, that rivalry I'm so excited to get into and just kind of start, because those guys are so cool and different. I love that, and things they hold to be true and dear to themselves. And yeah, I think Oklahoma, they've been a little bit more of that. I hate to say more of a blue collar team, because they've been a finesse team, but they won a lot more. So like same deal. So it's like they're sitting there going, hey, I thought, we're not chopped liver here. Why'd you guys buy this conference to get this easy schedule? Which I get. Now, to your point though, they did go travel to Alabama and win last year against Nick Saban.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not that they have. That's one of the biggest wins for a coach in college football history, because now you can always look back at it and say you did it. He was out the door, and you don't gotta wonder like Lane Kiffin does.
Yep.
Could I have ever beaten Saban? So I think that does a lot for them. So that they've already had the hard test. They've already made the playoff. They've already come close to winning the game. So yeah, I think Oklahoma should have been rewarded a little bit, but whatever.
Cooper JH7 says Texas, because Georgia, Oklahoma, and Michigan are free wins.
Sure.
Georgia still hasn't lost a regular season game since Cocktail Party 2020.
Oklahoma fans, I'm getting your point about these people.
Yep, I'm kind of getting it. Oklahoma, not a free win because it wasn't last year. Michigan, defending national champs.
Yeah.
Look, free? No, don't act like those are free wins. You have to act like those wins are hard earned. This is how this works in the SEC, Texas. You go 9-3, and you say it's the best 9-3 team in the history of college football.
Right.
Look what we did. You build them up. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
We had Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham on the same 9-win team. Here you go. Okay,
exactly.
You are literally not in Kansas anymore.
You once these games happen, you better not call those wins free. You can't do that. You got to twist it around. It's the spin zone. You build them up. That's the way this works.
Yeah, but hey, no, those are the 3 games. You're going to beat Michigan. If you don't, it's a big problem. You just got to go 1-1 those other 2. As we're saying, there are 3 quote-unquote big games. One of them should be a bunny, and then you just split the other 2.
Just like that. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
You're perfectly fine. Lights Out 3000 says, finally, Auburn has a laid-back level of schedule. We've been taking notes from Bama and Clemson.
Clemson. I love the Clemson spelling with a P. That's kind of like, as they become a power, kind of gone away. But that old school, I'll tell you what about Clemson.
I've never understood it. It's
how like your Southern grandpa says it. That's it. There's nothing really to it. Yeah.
I've been saying Clem. Well, I said Clem as a kid because of Horace Grant. Right. It was, what college did Horace Grant go to? And I always say Clem. That's what 2-year-old Connor would say.
Him in the fridge, man. 2 of your faves.
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah. I like Clem more than Clemson, but maybe that's just the Yankee in me. Yeah, Auburn finally having a schedule that isn't just an absolute gauntlet. Yep. It's still difficult though. It still has it, just because you don't have Georgia. I mean, you still have Georgia and Alabama. Like, that's.
But like within those confines, though, assuming you're not losing those rivalries, which is kind of like I was talking about. Like, I know it's a schedule, but you don't want to run from your rivals. I mean, now that Saban's gone, I'll play Alabama anytime. Okay, anything I said about not want to play Alabama, take that off the record. Let's play Alabama 5 times a year. Anyway, so I just didn't like Nick Saban because he always beat us. But point being, yeah, if you're gonna keep those rivalries and not run, because I would give you more crap if you ran. Okay. I think within that, I mean, the whole thing is this is a 6-win football team, So it's like if we're looking at Ole Miss with this schedule, we view them differently. I'm not being mean, but Hugh Freeze is just taking a minute to get off the ground at Auburn. I mean, the Cal game should not have been a game.
True. Yeah, it should not have been a game. And, this year, if you have improved, if you have made those year 2 strides, then that will be a significant blowout. And, as you talked about with Justin, like, you really won't know who this team is until late September, and then that's when things will kind of get real. And I'm fascinated to see what really what those first 5 games of conference play look like. Is Auburn sitting there at 1-4 to start out conference play? Because if they are, then all the questions that we have about in the preseason will feel very validated. They have Arkansas at home, Oklahoma at home, at Georgia, Mizzou on the road, Kentucky on the road. Can you get out of that at 2-3 and feel good? I think so. I absolutely think that's on the table. But that's kind of going to be the big important stretch of what defines your season. I think the schedule is still difficult because anytime you have to go to both Georgia and Alabama, it just deducts from your end of season win total, your ceiling, whatever that may be, even for the world's most improved team. Those special years for Auburn do not happen when they have to make those trips. That's just not the way that it's aligned.
Right.
But in theory, the schedule will lighten up eventually, but I don't think it really lightens up this year much at all.
You touched on this, though, and this is so frustrating if you're an Auburn fan, because it's the fact that, okay, you stuck this team who has, like we talked about, probably the best home field advantage in the SEC, because they're completely different. It's not like, oh, you got to go to Brian Denny and worry about Bama because Bama's good, right? It's more like, oh, this team is amazing at home and not as good on the road. And you've had these 2 recurring rivalries that have both been home and then away on the same years. And the SEC had the chance to fix that, and they didn't. I would be so pressed about that. I mean, you've got Georgia in Athens and Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Like, I would be petitioning the league now to say, you guys kind of bleeped us for years and years and years and we didn't pitch a fit, but you're taking us out of contention every other year by making us travel to Tuscaloosa and Athens every other year,
They moved the timing of it. Take that for what it is. And it's everything's up in the air, though. Everything's up in the air for the latter half of the decade. So, like, kind of TBD with all that and the way that this is going to look. So I wouldn't say anything is set in stone with just the way that sets up. And who knows if
take Alabama, some notes, Texas. Okay, they didn't throw a fit, but it's the type of energy we want around here. Okay, they're not running for anybody. They're not petitioning anybody or protesting. They're playing the games.
There have been some complaints from the Auburn side since Georgia has become Georgia. And understandably
Georgia
so.
was always something. It was not. I mean, whenever you gave me the stat about their amount of 10-win seasons they had, I was like, man, they really didn't. They just kind of didn't have bad years. They had the one they lost to UCF, but outside of that, there was like one more. Yeah.
The conversation just changes when you realize, oh, these are the 2 national championship contenders, not just from the SEC, but
overall
in the entire sport. Not ideal to go out to play them on the road.
Yeah.
Kind of kills the optimism going into a season. Okay. Look, our guy Tyler Ladley.
How do we mess up Ladley? Is my question.
I know that name was just built for this podcast.
Yeah,
I think he's got us. Do we go? I might need you to sway me here. I'm
going Texas. I'm going Texas because at the end of the day, I mean, I think like we talked about it. They're joined at the hip, Texas and Oklahoma. You see Oklahoma's getting treated, okay? You see what's going on. So you had the ability to kind of split these down the middle and chop it up, but they decided, because it's all like there are power teams in the SEC. There's some, again, Ole Miss kind of creeping up. Mizzou,
like, it's
kind of creeping up.
It's
hard. But that's like kind of a newer, those are kind of atypical things. That's arguably like the best period of, obviously the 2 Pinkel years, I'm not taking away from Mizzou, but that always kind of just felt like an extension of the Big 12 team. Like this feels like they're building something in the SEC for the first time. And so like that's kind of a newer thing. So it's like, yeah, if like, why would you not give these teams the chance to go travel to Austin? Why would you give them this free game in Nashville, this barbecue chicken? Like, why would you? And yeah, I get the Michigan thing, and that's probably what they were trying to clamor about, and it worked. So again, Auburn, we like you a little bit more.
This was set up well before all that stuff, though.
Yeah,
it's just bad. It's bad luck. It's bad luck to have to face Mizzou at a time like this for Oklahoma and Texas. Texas got a lot of breaks. I mean, the only break that Texas didn't get was that if Carson Beck had gone to the NFL, this Texas schedule would be like 12-0. Yeah, like without a doubt.
I think the quarterback play at Georgia will probably be fine from here on out, but we'll see. I mean,
that's true. Texas still, in my opinion, 12-0 ceiling is on the table.
Yeah, after Georgia was playing with their like 5th string quarterback that one day, Kirby was like, you know what I'm not going to do again? That right there.
Yeah. Never forget DeJuan Mathis, man.
Oh, I couldn't.
Never forget. All right. That was good. That was a lot.
Yeah.
I'm on board. Texas, easiest schedule in the SEC, the official easiest schedule in the SEC from the Saturday Down South podcast. Congratulations, Texas. You have won something. We will avoid doing horns down for a day. That's what you get. At least not on camera.
I really do horns down that much. Maybe I won't out of respect this time too. Though, and like I said, I'll say it. Austin's a beautiful city. If you're like a Florida fan or something, and your team's playing in Austin, check it out. It's a great place. It's one of the few places I've been that I'm like, if my college football team came here and lost, I would have a good time.
It's a good point. How many?
Like if I was in Knoxville and my team got smacked and I hear Rocky Top over and over again, that's what they want. It's be a bad time for me. And also, I just feel like, well, ain't that something? All right, I'm gonna go find something to do.
Just take a nice little dip in the river and call it a night. Just don't do it full Pat McAfee. Don't do that. Not the best.
You never want to go full Pat McAfee.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that more ways than one. Actually, that's even dating back to his cult stuff. If you look back at at one of the finer moments of his life. All right, that's a pod. That'll do it. If you haven't, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. That is Saturday Down South on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.